Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really wonderful guest today. Her name is Jen Thomas. She's a priestess and intuitive coach, healer, and spiritual mentor. I'm so excited to have her here. And so thank you, first of all, thank you so much for being here with me today, Jen.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sarah. It's so lovely that we can connect like this over the pond as I'm based in the UK. Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I know. I love it when I have guests that are from different countries because it's just for a couple of reasons. One, it's just fun to broaden, horizons and get different perspectives, but also when you find out how common we all are, it doesn't matter where we are on the globe. We have so much in common. And so I love it. But yeah, why don't we start with you sharing a little bit more about yourself and what it means to be all the hats that you wear?
All the hats that I wear, yeah, which kind of, change several times a day, as with any business owner, really. But yeah, so I haven't always been a priestess, a spiritual healer, and intuitive coach. I started my working life out in marketing in the video games industry. And so I did that for 20 years, which was great in the main. It was absolutely, I got to work with some amazing people and learned an awful lot about business and, the the commercial sense of everything. But ultimately, it wasn't my true calling. And for several years, towards the end of that part of my career, I could start to feel and hear this soul voice calling me. And being the very determined, focused person that I am, it took for a burnout for me to finally listen to that soul voice and take some action. The first action being recovery. Um, then, yeah, I really took that opportunity to go within and just get to know me again and find out what was making me happiest in that moment. And so I chose to retrain as a personal performance coach and neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, NLP for short. But whilst that journey was going on, my personal spiritual practice was really beginning to develop and open. I was beginning to develop and open. And so it took another few years before the two kind of became one, as it were. So that is how I've arrived here as a priestess, healer, and intuitive coach.
It's interesting how our journeys bloom as you put it, because it really goes from like, okay, I think I found it. Like, especially when you have a career and you're like, okay, cool, I got the career. I've got the thing. Like, I'm checking the boxes off, right? But your story isn't that unique in that eventually you got to a point where you started getting a different feeling like, hold on, I have the check marks, but is that really what I'm like being called to do? And then there was another voice. So, and again, that whole story of burnout is also it seems to be like the catalyst. Like if you don't find it on your own, it seems like spirit or the universe will find a way to make you find it.
Right? Yeah, 100%. In the community that I host and hold space for, it's always a big event. So whether it be a burnout, a relationship breakup, a career ending or breakup, a health experience, it's these big events that, yeah, I think very easily we could say the universe just goes, right, here you go. Now, listen.
Right. Which I think is so important to remember when those events are hitting us, because there's the victim mentality of, oh my God, this is happening to me. Or then there's the mentality of this is happening for me, which is so hard when you're going through it, right? Because you don't want to be thinking about how this is happening for you when your world's falling apart. But when you find that, like what you're learning underneath it, you start to see like, okay, I understand now why this had to happen and why I had to
Mm.
experience this. And so, it sounds like you were able to take this experience and do something with it, which is, I think, also speaks to your curiosity and your willingness to listen to that inner voice, because there are a lot of people who go through the big turmoil things and are still sleepwalking and don't realize that there's something more underneath it. So, now you get to be a voice to help those that maybe don't even know there's a voice underneath the turmoil.
Right. And I soul-heartedly agree with everything you said. And I want to help your audience or hopefully empower them to recognize that through practice, the spiritual kind of phrase in the community of everything happens for me, nothing happens to me, is what I truly learned to embody in the last 12 months. The home I'd lived in for 8 years was going to be sold, and I couldn't afford to stay in the area. And then shortly after that, I was diagnosed with stage 2 melanoma. And so, having spent all these years practicing the gratitude and the leaning into, and certainly intellectually understanding everything happens for me, nothing happens to me. Yeah, I think the universe went, okay, darling, here you go. Now let's do the embodied learning of this. And so that was, and it is now my foundation phrase. Thank you. Thank you, my goddess. I know this is happening for me. So, what is the opportunity for me here? And that key, I think that question was really key because it switched on my reticular activating system to look for opportunity and to, lift my frequency and vibration into one of a more like positive thinking. Like I believed there was opportunity. I had no idea what it was, but I believed there was opportunity. And so after doing, all the work, we know all the tools, I did the tapping, I did the meditation, I did the journaling, I went to sound baths, I spoke to friends, all of the things, all of which helped, all of which play a part and a valuable role. And so the first instance where my home was being sold and I was going to be made homeless, as many of your audience, and I'm sure you've experienced as well, ding, that little just burst of inspiration arrived. And I knew the opportunity for me was to learn to embody safety within myself, not through the illusion of bricks and mortar. And so, bing, came the idea that I would go cat sitting full time. I'd go traveling and look after cats in people's houses. And I mean, I've been doing it for nearly 7 months now, full time, and I absolutely love it. And so it became an opportunity for me to grow and experience. And then when I was diagnosed with the melanoma, 2 days before I was due to leave said house and go traveling on my first cat sit, I asked the question again. Thank you. Thank you, my goddess. I know this is happening for me. It sucks, but I know this is happening for me. Thank you. What's the opportunity for me here? What is the opportunity for me here? And it's a tough concept to consider when you're being faced with mortality through many weeks of, doing the work, more journaling, coaching, meditating, walking, connecting with nature. I arrived or have now arrived at a new program to offer out to my audience, which helps them to rebirth. The program's called Renewal, and it's about reclaiming your power, particularly as a highly sensitive, neurodivergent woman, to be able to embody that sovereignty, that power, that strength, and to drop the masking to drop the I have to be this person in order to insert whatever your goal is there, and recognize that you are strong enough as you are. You have the strength of 1,000 trees. Ugh, and those trees gave me a lot of strength. And yeah, it is. So I knew it was an experience for me to go through so that I could help other people. And oh, and I'm very happy to share that I'm all clear now. I'm all clear. I'm cancer free.
Oh, that's amazing. And that really kind of almost shows a testament to like what happens when you don't resist, right? Because and that's the oh my gosh. I'm going through a small trial right now. I mean, in comparison to what you shared, it's like this big. But to me, it feels bigger. I lost my phone in when I was at the New Jersey airport. So I'm currently phoneless. And it's like the first time I'm realizing like, oh my God, my life is on my phone. I mean, I usually record my podcast on my phone. I have my laptop here, but yeah, it's been like I've been trying to do that. Okay, it's happening for me. How is this happening for me? Maybe I need to get off my phone more. Maybe I need to, separate myself, be more present, to be more in the moment, but even whether it's a smaller thing, like I mean, again, like losing your phone is a big deal, but compared to, you know, big, the more mortality scares or being homeless, like it's this big, right? But we all have our own trials, right? And so they
Exactly.
show up differently. And so for me right now, being phoneless is like, oh my God. But it's what you do with it. And so whether it's a big thing whether it's a small thing that feels very big or a real true big thing that you have to like navigate, either way, it's how do you show up for that circumstance? And
Exactly.
that's the hard part when you know logically what you should do and that your emotions are like running,
Yes.
right? Because your emotion, and so I
Oh
love
yeah.
remembering how to switch, how to shift your perspective is the way that I see it. It's like an empowerment because when you decide, okay, this is happening for me, not to me, what am I learning or what is the next step that I can do within my power right now? It's basically realizing that there are things you can do versus when you're the victim, you're telling
Yeah.
yourself there's nothing you can do. It's just happening to you and now you're just along for the ride. And so I love your story because it's such a testament to when things are difficult, if you truly are able to surrender, obviously easier said than done, but when you're able to do that, now you're starting to make space for not just surrender in the sense of like trusting that it's that's happening on purpose, even though it doesn't feel that way, but then also seeing what comes of it on the other side.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so much in there that I love your words and the energy with them. Because what I noticed, and actually, this is something I said, I remember saying it now as I drove home from the hospital, having had the diagnosis. And I out loud said, I do not give my power away to cancer. I decide, I choose. And I think that is so much of what you were saying around this kind of, victim happening to me and, taking ownership of this is happening for me. Because in that moment, you reclaim your own sense of power and you can, and I would definitely encourage everyone to say it out loud. I choose, I decide, nobody else and nothing else has my power. I have it. It's me. It's mine. It's mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it helps too to also see what you can do because I think it's important to understand that there are certain things we can't control too. That there are just things that
Right.
are out of our control.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I don't know how much you follow American politics, but a lot has shifted for us in the recent couple of months. And,
I've been sending you all a lot of love, a lot of love.
I need it.
And I will continue to do so.
But in the midst of that, I was seeing the wars on both sides just from like more of a, even though I do have a side, so to speak, but it's more like I was in the space of like watching both sides and I'm like, this is what's happening is we're being pitted against each other. And that's exactly what we're all, many of us are falling trap into. And I thought, the one thing that I can do right now is I can decide how I show up, how I treat people, how I love people. Like that is something that's in my power. I can't control the other stuff, but I can show how I treat someone day to day, how I connect with people, and I think that
Right.
there's so much power in that. Like, okay, obviously I'm not in the White House. I can't make any decisions. I could go protest, but again, that's about as much as I can do versus what I can do is how can I be my best self today that's going to help other people be their best selves and you know
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, because that's what you're in control of, which is really important. But I think, something that we as human beings, not as spiritual people at all, but as human beings, we forget just how powerful our thoughts, energy, and emotions are. So, as a priestess of goddess Isis, I work too, and I'll work with my priestesses to overlight the White House, to overlight Parliament in, just global leaders, whether it's Parliament in London, whether it's, the White House in DC, wherever it might be, and that has immense power. And Goddess Isis says to me, you will never understand, your human self will never fathom the concept of the ripple effect, but all you have to do is trust in it. Because it just means, even if you're sat by yourself, in a room or in the forest, you can make a difference and you can enact change, and it makes you feel really good.
That reminds me of this of I don't know who it is and I wish I knew their name. It was another podcast I listened to. They were the guest, but they did these experiments where they'd get groups of people to basically pray for either
Mhm.
leaders or those that were dealing with cancer, for instance. And when you actually get groups of people who are dedicated to sending positive energy, I mean, miracles literally happen. And I think this particular person talked about groups of, I think it was seven or eight. Like there was like a certain number that seemed to be more powerful than others or whatever. But then, then there's the big groups of people who pray for like cities. Then they actually saw crime rates go down, So yeah, it's amazing how much power we do have that's not necessarily like in the physical realm, but beyond that I think
Right.
a lot of people those that aren't spiritual, and even those that are maybe who are skeptic, well, in the spiritual realm, like they don't see how much energy can actually do.
Right. And there is so much scientific evidence of it, that, and thankfully that is coming out more and more in, the mainstream arena. And I think the more that the conversations like you and I are having, and the more the information is shared on these scientific experiments of, the power of energy and words and emotions, then the less powerful those that try to divide become.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
they can't have power over our thoughts, our emotions, our decisions. They can, as you say, pitch us against each other, but ultimately, when that happens, it is the invitation to come home to your true self.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So before we go on to some of the questions I have here, I would love to hear, can you explain what it means to be a priestess, an intuitive coach and healer, like what it is that you actually do with those
Yeah.
offerings?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because we're great, I think, as people are having job titles, aren't we? And my job title has changed. I can't tell you how many times in the last 8 years since I've been doing this. So, but it is a kind of shorthand way, isn't it, of sort of introducing yourself and starting a conversation, which is exactly what we're doing here. Yeah, so I'm a priestess of Goddess Isis, and that for me looked like 3 years initially of training with Goddess Isis to embody healing, to learn. So like she taught me everything. She taught me soul retrieval, she taught me past life journeying, she taught me connection with nature and animals and trees and the earth and Gaia. And so eventually, after much resistance from me, I was invited strongly, one of those strong invitations that you try and ignore, but actually just come out as a, you need to do this now. She invited me to train other women to become priestesses. So that in a nutshell is the kind of priestess part of what I do. But I guess in more mainstream language, what I do is help highly sensitive women and neurodivergent women to unmask, to learn to trust themselves again and reach a very deep level of self acceptance so that they are able to lead from a very strong foundation of trust and certainty. And that, for anybody that is highly sensitive and neurodivergent listening to this will understand, the absolute strength and power of that, because we have learned over decades and centuries to people please. Others come first. We please others first. And we have allowed ourselves to be influenced by others' opinions. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. You ought to be doing this. Essentially, giving our power away to others. So when you're able to reclaim that, stand in your own sovereignty, and be able to know with certainty that what you're doing, to your point earlier, is exactly as it should be, even if it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's like, that's when we get really courageous and brave and trust in what we're sensing, feeling, seeing, hearing, even smelling or tasting in some cases, and to trust in it even when it doesn't make logical sense. In fact, especially when it doesn't make logical sense.
That's amazing. So I definitely I can relate to a lot of what you just shared because I'm neurodivergent and very sensitive. And it's been like that one thing that I've gotten better at understanding that my sensitivity is a superpower, but there's still that stigma of "Oh, you're so sensitive, you know?
Yeah. And question ourselves, am I being oversensitive? Am I being too sensitive? No, is the answer. Never. You're being you. But I think what I have learned and continue to learn is to sit with that sensitivity and breathe into it. I find myself saying things like, I'm safe in my body. It's safe for me to be in my body. Breathe into it, to allow that sensitivity to move and flow rather than me feel it and feel white hot burned. Like, just get it away from me. I can't cope.
So when you work with people to like, for instance, women who are into like the priestess side of things, do you work with them with Isis as well? Is it like, is it through Isis?
Yeah, so my whole ethos with training and mentoring other priestesses of Goddess Isis is that it is about unlocking their uniqueness.
Mm.
So, it's kind of, in some ways, it's a bit of an oxymoron training because it's kind of, I'm training you in what I've learned and what I've been taught, but you will use it differently because you're unique. And it is, Goddess Isis is all about embracing the uniqueness of each person and each soul so that your journey as a priestess on the path of the priestess will be different to the next person's and won't be the same as mine. And you won't work with the tools and the gifts in the same way that I do.
Yeah. And that I love that too because I think that so I'm a big believer in do what feels right for you. So for me personally, my area of expertise, I guess, is tarot. I'm a tarot reader. And I've been feeling this pull to start teaching, so I haven't done it yet. I've just been kind of like, okay, I hear you. I don't know if I'm ready because I mean, I don't in a world where there's certificates and schooling and things like that, I'm like, I have my personal experience. I have a course I took in the very beginning, and even that course, she's amazing, but she doesn't give out like certificates because she feels kind of the same way that you do. That's like it's just a piece of paper. This isn't about the paper, it's about the journey. And for me
Right.
personally, my calling to teach is more about teaching others to listen to themselves because tarot is people think it's just like a science, but it's really not. It's a combination of the symbols and knowing what those symbols mean to you, which could vary differently per reader, and then being open to being that channel in between the cards and what's coming through from spirit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a very nuanced thing, and that's what I'm feeling called to teach. Not like okay, so the Fool means this and the Tower means this. No, I want to know, what does that mean to you? I'll give you the basis of how I read it, which, a lot of it does coincide with like the traditional, but there's so much information about each card that it's like it's a portion of, the
Mm.
full. And then you take it, and either if that resonates, great, you can go ahead and use it as your base, or if that doesn't resonate, what does that card mean to you? Because it's not about it's not about the cookie cutter, okay, this is what it means. It's what are you picking up from it versus,
Right.
the
It's the
specifics. Yeah.
it's the perfect empowerment tool, right? Because if you wanted to be told cookie cutter what something meant and what something was, then you would just go and ask somebody. And this is what we've been so conditioned, haven't we? That this hierarchical structure and figures in authority that we go to ask permission. Is it right for me to think this? Is it right for me to feel this? Is it right for me to, um, you know, interpret this card in this way? And what you're doing, and you are doing it already, is that you're giving people permission to be themselves, right? And I think this is probably one of the most powerful movements in feminine self-leadership as we move forward and help to create this new earth and this new paradigm that we're also desperate for and been crying out for millennia. So yeah, my resistance with Goddess Isis on doing the priestess training was exactly that. I out loud. So for it to be official, it needs to have a certificate. And and I don't really believe in that kind of thing. And also, for my business insurance purposes, there will need to be a certificate. And that was my kind of repeating argument for weeks until I got the, oh, I see. Yeah, actually, everything that I'm trying to teach and empower and help and inspire people with is to let go of that conditioning, let go of these, you know, I don't know, systems. They have a place. Don't get me wrong. Like, I am very proud of my qualifications in coaching and NLP. And I think, I have known people to go out and practice and call themselves coaches without the training, and it's dangerous. We're working with people's emotions and subconscious minds here. This is, so that it's as in everything, I'm sure that we do when you talk about here, it's about balance. It's about recognizing that there isn't one size fits all, which is the whole point of being neurodivergent, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's one probably one of the best diagnoses I ever had was a couple of years ago. I found out I was ADHD, and I was like, oh my goodness, my entire life now makes sense.
Right. You suddenly get permission to be you, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I have a client who's just been diagnosed, and I was saying to her, and it was kind of, when I've got that official diagnosis, I will. And I kept saying to her, you already know the truth. What difference does a piece of paper make to you? And actually, it is the officialness from a psychologist to say, yes, this is XYZ about you. It just gives you permission to be yourself sometimes, I think.
Yeah. And even in that regard, there are many psychologists who won't call ADHD what it is either, because it doesn't, there are still many people who think it's the hyper little boy in the back of the classroom who can't sit
Right.
still. And it's not
Yeah.
that. That's why so many of us women were misdiagnosed or not even noticed for having these symptoms, because we didn't have the typical, I can't sit in my seat kind of energy that boys often have. So, I feel for a lot of women. I'm in a ADHD group for women, And I can't tell you how many times they get shut down because, oh, well, you don't you can keep your job. You don't have trouble keeping your job. Or you seem to do well in school. And it's like, but what if that was all just like over, that push to being an overachiever? And okay, we have bills to pay. Doesn't mean we can't hold down a job. Sometimes we're late to that job. Yeah, there's different levels of it for sure. Like for me, I'm an entrepreneur, and that's how I found that I thrive is when I'm not working for anybody else. You know,
Yeah.
I can do it if it's on my time.
Right. And I think, and it really fuels that creativity and the newness, like dopamine here. But it doesn't mean, it's kind of, I think you're so right. There is this sort of attitude of, well, if you've got ADHD, then you can't function, like full stop. And it's not true. It's not true at all.
Either you
Uh,
can't function or it doesn't exist. So it's like there's both sides of it, right? My
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
So with everything that you do offer, do you feel like you've found your calling or your magic or gifts that you bring to this world?
yeah. And actually very recently, which might sound a bit crazy, like in the last month recently, recognized that my purpose and my business can be two separate entities. And it's, I think, because I left my corporate career and, to answer this calling, I very much felt that my purpose was my work, my business. And actually, my purpose is it's manyfold. My purpose is to be a way shower for others. My purpose is to help others see themselves in the way that I see them, in the way that unconditional love sees them. And my purpose is also to help people to come home to themselves and feel comfortable in their own skin. That was my ultimate, I think, lesson in my melanoma journey was getting truly comfortable in my own skin. And I also have a great passion and purpose with nature and animals. I wrote a book and channeled the messages. They're beautiful, like spiritual coaching through the voices of nature. Who knew? It's there and it's beautiful. And so to be able to, help unify humanity as part of nature again feels amazing. And yeah, sometimes it's my work, sometimes it's just me being me. So, in a very roundabout way, does that answer your question?
Yes, I really like how you answered that because, and I've said this time and time again, many of us, especially as humans, we like to put purpose and career in like a box. It's like, okay, this is my purpose. And so I love when I get an answer like yours where it's like, it's not just the thing that you do or the many things you do in your case, right? It's how you show up. It's how you embody. It's basically kind of like what your light when you are you does to other people. And so it kind of comes back to, and I feel like our ultimate purpose as spiritual beings having our human experience here, I believe our ultimate purpose is to be as true to ourselves as we can be, so that way we can connect better with others. And then through our connection, we help others. And that can show up. I mean, even if someone doesn't like, for instance, go into the service industry as far as like spiritual or anything else. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, it has to be in the service industry. Like, no, it doesn't. You could be doing anything, so long, that you enjoy it, it lights you up, and you can feel like you could be you, whether you're working or you're taking your dog for a walk or you're going to the grocery store. Like, it's the
Yeah.
moment to moment embodiment of yourself ultimately.
Yeah. Right. But I think the reason or one of the reasons we identify our purpose so much with our work and our career is because we associate it with money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as human beings and the only species that has to pay to live here by our own creation, clearly money is a necessity, but it doesn't have to be through our purpose only. We can do a job that we enjoy and have a purpose, and I love your point. I think ultimately, my soul team said this to me a billion times in the beginning of this journey and still remind me of it now. Our ultimate purpose is to be happy and to follow our happy. It's just that when our human self responds with, I don't know what makes me happy, or I like being out in nature, but that's not going to pay the bills. That I think that's where we get so stuck. Many people end up being in jobs that they hate for so long because they can't see a way out because they're associating one with the other and being connected. But what if it wasn't? What if we allowed ourselves to follow what makes us happy in each moment of each day?
Yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh. 100% yes. And I think because what you're saying is follow our happy, right? And it's interesting because I think God, if you as humans again, whether the way we see things, we think happiness is a destination, and it's not. It's a moment to moment being present. You have to be present to be happy. And
Right.
so when you're able to be present, it really doesn't matter whether you're working your job or you're out in nature. You're finding you're in the moment and you're finding your joys in the little things. And if you don't enjoy your job, I think at that point it's a little bit easier to see like, okay, so maybe there's another thing I can do that I'll enjoy better that you can, broaden your horizons to find. But if we're constantly feeling like it's out there somewhere, we're not in the moment and we're searching for something that's we're never going to find because it's
Right.
here. And so
Right.
it's so interesting because, and this has come up a ton with my readings, because when I do tarot readings, I don't do like the predictive type. It's really just about healing. It's about the now. I'm a big believer in let me tell you what you can do now to create the future you desire versus telling you, well, this is your future, good luck. You know?
Right. Right. Because now is truly all we ever have.
Exactly. And I cannot tell you how often I see things about being, finding, like, for instance, I see a lot of people who are stuck in the work now, play later mentality. And what comes up
Mm.
a lot is why don't we play while we work? Why can't we find our play in the work that we do? And if we can't
Yeah.
find the play in the work that we do, then we just need to find different work. You know what I mean? But there's
Yeah.
and which obviously is but it's being able to find that, how can I find what lights me up, even if it's just a little bit. Like, where can I find, maybe it's even if you don't like the work you're doing, what in that work can you find that's enjoyable? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
and that's found in the now, in the present.
Yeah. Like, how can I have fun with this?
Hmm.
And so I test it out myself sometimes, 9 times out of 10, not very successfully, I might add, but I do try it out. That, okay, I've got hours of spreadsheets to do, and there are my accounts. I have to do it. Like, I just have to do it. And it is the driest, dullest thing in the world for me. So how can I make it fun? So I will color code cells in the Excel sheet, and I will spend probably way too much time color coordinating everything unnecessarily, but it brings a bit of creativity and joy to it, I think, which is so important. And because we put so much bloody pressure on ourselves, so much. So something I learned very early on, actually, was it whilst I was recovering from that first burnout way back in nearly 10 years ago, in 2015. And I remember going, okay, I've got to find a new career. Oh God, what makes me happy? What makes me happy? Cue all the snot bubbles, all the inner child tantrum. I don't know what makes me happy. So I developed what makes me happier than now, what would make me a little bit happier. And it would start with more just standing outside in the sunshine. That would make me feel happier. And then when I got there, okay, well, what would make me feel happier from here? Well, actually walking a bit and spending time with some trees, and maybe I'll see some deer or something out in the forest. That would make me happy. And then before you know it, to your words, you're experiencing happiness in that moment. And then the flow can start to happen.
That's really great advice because it gives you something practical and tangible you can start doing literally now.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And it's just small and achievable, and it gets you moving, it gets you starting so that you're not just stuck in this paralyzed, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's relatable and it also gets you curious because okay, if standing in the sunshine will make me feel a little bit better, well then what else will make me feel better? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like now you're kind of getting more into that. I mean, maybe not at first because it takes practice, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
it gets you into the space where you're like, okay, so if that makes me happier, then what else can make me happier? And I think curiosity is like one of the most underestimated things out
Yeah.
there because like think when you're curious, there's kind of an excitement behind it, like, oh, what else am I going to learn? This is new. This is something I
Right.
don't understand. Let me kind of put my investigator hat on and, figure
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that it just opens up that curiosity, like, so being outside will make me feel just a little bit better than being inside. Well, what outside can I do beyond that? It just kind of opens up these possibilities that maybe when you're just sitting inside going, what makes me happy? That you're totally missing because you're thinking it has to be this thing or this destination. Again, this idea of this
Right.
destination.
Yeah. When I have this career that's aligned to my sole purpose, I'll be happy. Then it will always be over there and
Yeah.
never here.
That's how I read the lovers card in tarot, which I know is not the traditional way at all, but that's exactly how I read it. It's the carrot mentality. It's a dangled carrot mentality. Once I get this thing, then I'll be whole. And the whole invitation is, but you're already whole. Like out there, it's nice to have goals and to have ideas of what you want, but that thing isn't going to complete you any more than you're already complete right now. So, like, what is
Mm,
it that you think that thing is going to give you? And then how can you start to create it now? Like we
right,
think,
right.
oh, once I get that promotion, I'll be more confident. Okay, so where's your confidence right now? You know?
It's working it inside out instead of
Mhm.
outside in, right? Yeah. And
Exactly.
it's so simple and so powerful. But I don't know about you. It's taken me years to understand that concept.
I'm still learning it. But-
Right. And I think we always will be. But I think that is one of the most powerful permissions we can give ourselves. Give myself permission to learn, to fall over, to trip up, to get it wrong, I give myself permission to get it right too,
One of
whatever
my
that means for me.
Yeah, one of my favorite lessons that I've learned recently, probably in the last 6 months or so, is that things never turn out the way we imagine they will, ever. Like if you go to a
Ever.
party and you're imagining how it's going to turn out, what's going to be said, and who's going to say this and that. When you go to the party, the room never looks the way you think it will. The decorations never look, the vibe, the conversations. Like when you're in the moment, it never, ever, ever unveils or unrolls the way that you think it will up here. And that's even the bad too. I'm just talking about like the good, but even the bad stuff when we're like, oh my gosh, I'm dreading this and it's going to be this and that. And then you go through it and it doesn't turn out the way you think it will, like as far as like the way it plays out. And so once I learned that, then I realized, oh, so I stopped, and not completely, but I've really caught myself when I start to get nervous or try to like imagine what's to come, which is just a secure thing to make me feel better, right? I start to catch myself and go, it can turn out a million different ways. So
Right.
why don't I just be here as much as possible? Because eventually I'll be there. The enough here's will get me there. You know what I mean?
Enough years will get me there. I love that. I love that.
So, yeah, so it's just it's helped me to be more present and less worried about the future because it never plays out the way you think it will.
Right. Doesn't it just take the pressure off and that you can let go? And do you know the other thing I think I've really learned, because I am definitely a recovering control freak and having to plan things to the nth degree. And so I'm a coach who doesn't believe in goals now. What? Um, because it doesn't when you, I love your analogy of, uh, thinking, planning what the party is going to be like and how it's going to look and who's going to be there and how you're going to be and how they're going to be, the conversations, etc. It leaves no room for the magic of the universe to come in and just work its magic. I think when I went through that cancer journey last year, I was very aware as a spiritual leader and a spiritual healer, like, the conversation's going to come up about treatment and medicine and, how I choose to heal. And so what I realized was, okay, I have a choice and I can do all the things. I can do all the right things. I can, and I did take control of my nutrition, my exercise, my spiritual practice became non-negotiable. The rest, the sleep, drinking filtered water, yada yada, all of it. But ultimately there was a percentage of my health that I believe, and it doesn't need to be anybody else's belief, but I believe was, the magic of the universe, the luck that didn't matter what I did, didn't matter what I believed, what affirmations, what I was putting in my body or whatever, that there's an element of luck or the unknown. And I think certainly when you go to a party, hopefully that's a much more exciting experience than going on a health journey. But yeah, I'm like, I want the magic. I want the magic. Like that's what makes this batshit bonkers journey fun. The unexpected magic. I don't want to know the outcome and every plan and step along the way.
I guess I'm a control freak in my own way, and that I like to be like I'm not like OCD or anything like that, but I do like to, I like things to work out a certain way, and I think that's where I'm trying to learn to release that, you know what I mean? But I think that that's part of my like I love synchronicity stories, and yet I'm not always I don't think I'm always seeing them because I'm so like, okay, this is my time frame. This is what I have to get done. This is, you know what I mean? And like learning how to just be like, okay, let's just see what happens. It's a lot easier to be present, to say to be present than it is to be present. So it's like this kind of internal war. But yeah, when you're able to see, be present enough to see the things, I think that one, it does make it more magical. And two, you're able to see how when you just let go how things can just line up like a small synchronicity. I mean, this is teeny tiny, but when I lost my phone and I made it back to California, and I already knew I lost it right before I got on the plane, but we were about to miss our flight, so I couldn't like investigate or go to Lost and Found, unfortunately. So we went to T-Mobile, and well, first I called T-Mobile, and they asked me for my PIN, which I have never had. Apparently, I created it when I set up my team, a long time ago. And no one's ever said, oh, hey, let's get you a new one or let me give it to you. It's never come up. It's always just been, oh, well, you've got your ID. I can verify you're good. Now, when I call them to tell them I lost my phone, they're like, oh, I need your pen. Oh, you don't have your pen? Let me text you a code. And I'm like, well, I don't have my phone, so I can't. So and it was the first time ever that I thought, I need them to change my PIN. I need to figure out how to do that. I went into this to a T-Mobile store in person with my ID, and I told the girl, no one's ever offered or asked me if I want to change my PIN, but is it possible? And she said, you know what's funny? I just learned today that you can change a customer's PIN, and I just did it with the person before you. I'm like, what are the
Wow.
odds? That I mean, she just found that out. Well, I could have gone any other employee who didn't know that.
Right,
And then this whole
right.
process would have been a lot harder.
Right. I just love it. It is like, your fairy godmother comes in and just, ding, waves her wand, you know, and I want that magic in my world. I don't want it to be predictable and known all the time. You know, I don't want it to be the opposite. I don't want it to be all down to magic and synchronicity because that feels teeny bit chaotic.
Well, we do need to have, we need to function as a human being.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah,
So
function in
yeah,
society.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. And yeah, that for me, it's the things like that, seemingly small, that are actually huge, that just make me grin. You know, they make my whole body smile. And I love that feeling. I just love that feeling. So all the magic, please, universe. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So I do have one more question, and then we're gonna get to my favorite segment in a moment called Synchronicity Stories. So we'll definitely get there because I'm sure you have some wonderful ones. But what are some common challenges you see the most in the work that you do? And then what's an advice you'd give for that struggle?
Mm. That's a really great question. I think probably what I hear the most is, Jen, I feel overwhelmed. Feel overwhelmed. And I'm like, I hear you. I feel you. It is a feeling I have experienced far more times in my life than not, I would say. So I empathize greatly. And essentially, what's happening, I mean, there's lots of different reasons for like overwhelm, right? But essentially, a lot of times, what's happening with overwhelm is your mental inbox is full and you're still trying to send it emails, right? So when we're overwhelmed, we get into, you know, we can get into the stuckness, the paralysis of not taking any action. So then we go looking for more answers externally, which we touched on before. And we get those answers, but they just might not be the answers that we want, or they are the answers that we want, but we're like, oh, that's too big, it's too much, or I can't, you know, and all the stories start happening. And then we still feel stuck and we still feel overwhelmed and we still feel paranoid, paralyzed, and nothing's changed. So we go and repeat the cycle, right? And we get to implosion state. So the antidote, if you like, is it's really simple. It's really simple and really hard to do. Or it's not hard to do. We make it harder than it needs to be. For me, overwhelm is what we've been talking about a lot throughout this conversation, and it is about getting into the present, being into the here and now, and recognizing what you can control and what you can affect, and what you can change and what you can't change. And it is meditation. But I think recognizing that everybody meditates differently. So if anybody listening to this has just rolled their eyes with meditation, then meditation is different for everybody, you know. And for me, I need 2 or 3 different practices to make my meditation practice consistent. So, yes, I can sit on the floor cross-legged and meditate. But I also meditate while I'm walking in nature. I meditate in the bath. I meditate playing a very well-known game on your phone, you know, because for me and the way that it's like the way my brain works, it's like when I'm playing a computer game on my phone, it's like the toy that's distracting my ego, like a kitten over here, so that my soul self can come through over here. But it is that overwhelm is just about being able to come back to you, come back to your center, your foundation, and breathe, breathe intentionally and consciously, and then start to take small, achievable actions. And so interestingly, when we do that, so much of what we think we have to do just falls away. It's just not even there anymore. So, yeah, overwhelm equals meditation.
That's great. That's really, and thank you for explaining that there's different ways of meditating. You know, it's interesting you said that too about the video game, because there is a game that I play that it's kind of like Tetris, but not. It's like it's a block puzzle, but it's the same idea of Tetris without
Mhm.
the panicky, oh my God, it's dropping faster feeling. It's just the I put this block here and it disappears. And so anyways, it's a little bit more calming, but you know, I've thought about, and when you mentioned it, I thought, you know what? I just zone when that happens. When I play that game, most of the time I'm just kind of like in my head. I'm just like, you know, it's kind of like I never thought about it till you said that, but it's kind of like I check off my ego and my thoughts that like to just spin. It's kind of like a break. So I don't know if I'll use that, but I might try that. I've never thought about combining the two because I'm one of those
Mm.
people who do struggle with meditation. I love it when I do it, when I actually am like, okay, I'm going to sit down and do it. I love it, but it's
Mm.
the consistency that I struggle with, and it's also the moment I do it more than once in a row, it becomes a chore in my brain. It becomes a have
Yeah.
to. And so I
Yeah.
need to find ways to like make it not a have to, it's a get to. And it's like, how do you do that when but yeah, so it can totally come in different ways. And so I love the different examples you shared. So anyone listening who might have been like, oh my God, I struggle with meditation, they're like, oh, there are other options here.
Yeah, right. Yes. And, I think as well, the amount of time you give it to yourself, for me, like when I'm really deep in that practice, it's 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, but I can get just as much from doing 5 minutes. Sometimes, I think we have to give ourselves permission to do that small, achievable thing. It's like, well, I don't have an hour, because let's be honest, half an hour of meditation is actually 10 minutes of faffing about, getting everything set up, your crystals, your candles lit, you know, and another 10 minutes of having a full-on argument with yourself and writing the shopping list that you need to do later and everything. And then we get into the meditation practice, right? So 5 minutes of saying, I breathe love in, I breathe love out, can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and it's in your and I guess when you make it that short 5 minutes too, you understand that it's like it's direct. Like you're directing your attention in that place without having to do all the running around. I mean, it's true when I schedule, okay, I'm gonna meditate at 8 a.m. It's, usually I get ready by 8:10. It's okay, I'm getting my chair out, I'm getting comfy, I'm getting the YouTube. So I like to use like those free imagery ones, right? I'm finding the right
Oh,
one on
yeah.
YouTube. And I have to like get into the zone. It becomes like, okay, I'm gonna do it at this time. Then it becomes like, oh, I'm starting later and it took me longer. And it does, it kind of does feel like, oh, okay, here we go. But when you just say, okay, I'm gonna do 5 minutes, you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to, you just sit down and focus your attention for that short amount of time. So you're not even asking your brain to do it for very long. Those of us with
Right.
neurodivergent would totally get why that's a thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just very like, okay, direct. Now we can move on, but it's creating that small space just for us. That's just
Yeah.
quick, not overwhelming to
Yeah.
think about or plan. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And to know, just to trust that when I just breathe, like thankfully we can all do the breathing, that it has a really powerful effect on the nervous system, on the physical body, on the emotional body, on the soul body, and the ripple effect that we create.
So from here, I would love to shift to what I call synchronicity story time. It's
Okay.
Yeah, it's literally my favorite segment because to your point, it's like talking about real life magic. So do you have any fun stories or stories in general that like whether it's a positive paranormal story or where things just lined up perfectly in a way that you just know that it was, spirit stepping in? Do you have a story like that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, like my life, but no. So let me take how Nature's Wisdom came about, the ebook I wrote, because it was full of synchronicities that just made me sometimes just my mouth hit the floor And at other times I would giggle so much, just going, oh, I see what you're doing here. Because there were so many here, there, and everywhere. So one of them, but this whole start of this journey really was connecting with the sacred white lions, which happened in a meditation and then in the charity representative in real life. I didn't meet the lions in real life. And it was one of these white lions. And if people haven't heard of the white lions, then please go to their website. It's whitelions.org. It's the Global White Lion Protection Trust. And you can learn all about these amazing, beautiful, sacred, sentient beings. In connection with one of these white lions back in 2020, one of them invited me to share the stories and messages I was receiving from nature in a book called Nature's Wisdom. So fast forward all the resistance and the who am I to write this? Who am I to do this? Kind of imposter syndrome journeys. Just as I was thinking, nah, I don't think this. I think that was my ego making it up. It's not a thing. Like if my memory is probably not correct, but it felt like moments later, an email arrived from Hay House Publishing in my inbox to say that they were bringing their writers' workshop event to the UK, and it was going to be in Edinburgh. And I was like, no way, these are usually held in the US. So this now feels accessible. So I went to look at the ticket and the accommodation and started telling myself the story like, I can't afford it. I haven't got the money. It's not meant to be. And I kind of heard myself say it and I was like, okay, I catch that. Okay, universe, if this is meant to be, show me the way, show me a way. Bing, a WhatsApp message arrives from a friend of mine I hadn't heard from in months saying, I don't suppose you have seen this Hay House writers workshop in Edinburgh, have you? Do you want to go and let's share a room? I was like, I'll explain later. Yes, I'm in. And then it was just synchronicity after synchronicity after synchronicity to seeing a logo on the cover of a book. And then Kyle Gray, who is one of my greatest teachers and mentors and who I trained with in Certified Angel Guide training, signed a book for me. And I've met him a few times before and he signed a few things for me. So I know his signature. And on this occasion, he drew a different image and it was the one of the cover of the book that I'd seen. And I just burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, this is so meant to be, so meant to be. And then there were loads more synchronicities after that, but they're in the book, so people can read it rather than sit here and listen to the magic of it all unfolding over another hour.
That is incredible. Oh my gosh, I got so many chills. And of course, I was laughing too. You saw me because I was muted, but I mean, you just have to laugh with it. Like, you're like, you asked, and they say you ask and you shall receive, right? And
Yeah.
so you left it open, you left the door crack. You're like, okay, if it's meant to open it for my universe, and then there you have it.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah. And every time I've questioned it, something else has come in. The universe is like, this is happening.
Yes,
Come
just
on,
say
let's
yes.
go.
Just,
Yeah, just say yes.
just walking. It's like the way I read the moon. The way I read the moon in tarot is like it's a walk of faith, right? It's when you can't see the whole staircase. You're just taking one step at a time and you're just following the moonlight and you're just trusting that, okay, I'm trusting you, universe, that there's not going to be a cliff on the other side of the step.
Yeah.
It's gonna keep
Yeah.
going. I have one final question that I love to ask. And it's a big kind of like a legacy question. What is one message that you would love to leave for future generations?
Oh, do you know, such a good question. And I'm gonna actually stick with the theme of nature's wisdom. And it was a chapter or yeah, I'll call them chapters, but a message I received from from a group of vultures. Obviously, this was over internet link with South Africa. And the kind of wisdom that came through was leave a heart print, not a footprint. And it's so simple and so powerful. It's sort of, yeah, leave your legacy of love and vibration and frequency, not a physical mark, you know. Let's not destroy the earth, let's love her.
Wow, what's kind of interesting as soon as you said the leave a carpet, not a footprint, I heard a raven outside my window.
Of course
I
you
know
do,
that they're
Dave.
technically vultures, right? Like they look for things after the fact, right? They don't I think I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting. I'm like, oh, there's a raven. And I heard it twice too. It like made itself known twice. So I was like, huh,
Right.
that's interesting timing.
So synchronistic, you might say.
Absolutely.
So ravens they're the symbol of being the messenger between the two worlds.
Oh wow. Okay, now I just got chills. It was almost like it was divine wisdom you just shared, and that was the outside confirmation, the in between,
Mhm.
the
I
bridge.
love nature. The meta, I mean, this could be a whole nother conversation, but the metaphors that I've now learned to read in nature about what's going on within,
Mhm.
oh, so powerful, so helpful and interesting.
We're definitely going to have to get more information on your book. I will put it in the links below so people can find it. So it's called The Wisdom of Nature.
It's called Nature's Wisdom: Life Lessons from Mother Earth, and it's an interactive ebook. So
Oh,
you don't buy it as a book and download it. It's on a platform called Substack where you subscribe to it monthly. And with each chapter, I've given journal prompts. So you can get to interpret the meaning for you in that moment. It's not me or nature telling you, it's helping you interpret what it means for you.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, so I will definitely have to get the link for that so we could put it in the show notes for listeners who I know will want to check that out. And how else can they find you if they want to work with you?
So I am on Facebook, Jen Thomas on Facebook, and my website is revitalizecoaching.co.uk. And it is revitalize spelt with an S, as we do in UK English.
Perfect. I will be sure to put that in the show notes. Are you on Instagram as well, or is it mainly Facebook?
Mainly Facebook, yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll put all of that in the show notes. And thank you for such a lovely conversation. I really enjoyed just chatting with you. It's interesting because I always have like questions that I follow, but like we didn't even need the questions. I kind of sprinkled them in there, but just you're so easy to talk to. And I feel like
Oh,
just we just had a conversation and listeners got to be a fly on the wall.
right. Yeah, which are the best ones, aren't they? And I'm so glad that we connected and got to have this conversation. I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.